During this session, we will dive into the relationship between FinTech and healthcare and where strategic, corporate, and venture investment are driving these innovation forward. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Sue Tyler. Sue is a venture partner at Caduceus Capital, an angel investor, a former C-suite executive for Medical Mutual, and she's also active on multiple startup boards, and I'm on some of those boards with Sue. Sue, welcome to Ohio VC Fest, and we're grateful to have you lead this conversation. And that's all they would trust me to say.
I trust you, Matthew. So joining me today here on the stage, the far end is Pete Wheeler, Senior Vice President for Healthcare and Insurance Vertical at Keybank. Next to Pete is Neil Wyant, the Vice President of University Hospitals Ventures. In the center, Diana Welch Howell, the head of Laurel Road for Hospitals. And right next to me here is Bryan Bloom, the head of Enterprise Sales for TailorMed. So I thought I could go through their bios, where they went to school, all their accomplishments, their career journeys, and I thought, no, you don't care, right? You can look that up online. So what I thought I would share is something a little more interesting about each member of the panel, and there'll be a big reveal at the end, so pay attention. So one of us here up on stage is an adrenaline junkie. This person has done a solo skydive, has dove over 100 feet into the ocean, and has been clocked at over 50 miles per hour on skis. A second member of our group up here hosted a weekly radio show for 2 years. Another member of the group had the unique experience of having personal property stolen by none other than Bill Clinton, their copy of The Great Gatsby. We have a sailor up here, a lifelong sailor who spent many years racing a boat named the Bonehead on the East Coast, and another member of our group went scuba diving with a 30-foot whale shark last week. So wait for the big reveal. And on to our program. We got the topic of innovation at the intersection of FinTech and healthcare. Healthcare and banking are two of the largest industries in Ohio. And obviously, we have representatives from two of the industry leaders up here between University Hospitals and Keybank. We also have representatives from two smaller organizations. So what's interesting today as this panel came together is we got into a bit of a David v. Goliath theme, small companies working with big companies for mutual advantage. So we'll talk more about that as we go on. But to get it started, I want to let these folks introduce a little bit about what they and their organizations do. So let's start with Neil. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at University Hospitals Ventures, things that you're particularly excited about.
Well, thanks, Sue, and thanks to the Jumpstart team for putting this together, and to all of you who are from out of town, welcome to Cleveland. We're happy to have you here and happy to show off some of the work that we're doing. University Hospital Ventures, for those of you who don't know, is the innovation and commercialization arm for university hospitals. We're a regional hospital system, about $5 billion, which in our industry makes us a mid-size company. We have over 30,000 employees, and I'm bringing some of this up because, like many big industries, we share common problems that I think we're going to start to talk about. So I'm excited about that opportunity. We have active inside-out and outside-in programs. Our inside-out program is really built around our academic mission. We're a top 10 academic medical center. We do about $200 million in research annually. Half of it's federally funded, spinning off IP, from which we do licensing and are starting to spin more companies out. In fact, one of the EIRs who's helped us take a company out of the lab, now move into a pre-seed round and partner with a another Midwest hospital to launch is in the audience. I don't know if Ethan, I can't see anything out there, but maybe if you're out there, you can wave your hand. And people are interested in learning more about how we do that. Ethan can share. We're really excited about the company Hemaptics, which is really driving blood utilization and savings there. We have active outside-in programs where we're going out into the community to find solutions to our problems. We partner with large and small companies to solve our problems. We look at med tech devices. We look at software solutions. We don't do therapeutics. One of the things that we're really excited about for our outside-in program is our Radically platform, RADI for radiology and CLE for Cleveland. This platform was set up to enable partnering with small companies principally, but not exclusively, around radiology solutions, providing access to our clinical insights, data, and we're really, really excited. We've just staffed up there, and anybody who's doing work in radiology and looking for a partner, please come visit us. Sitting on top of our inside out and outside in programs, we have an ability to invest. We invest from a pre-seed fund, an $8 million healthcare collaboration fund in partnership with Jumpstart. And we invest off balance sheet. We invest a little bit later stage off balance sheet. We'll do seed to Series C investing, typically under $1 million, but we've invested up to $5 million in a Series C financing. One of the things about our investing vehicle that I think is particularly exciting, especially to some of our portfolio companies, is we'd like to partner with other strategics. In most of our investments, we have other hospital system co-investors, and in fact, when we invested in TailorMed, which for us has to take place after we have a strategic relationship with a company. So after TailorMed became a vendor to us, we started looking at them as a potential investment and actually partnered with 2 other hospital systems to diligence and as part of the syndicate, and worked with one of the existing hospital systems who was already in there. And as an investor, that gives us great comfort about market validation when 3 different hospital systems are all saying the same thing. And I know from the company perspective, having us on their cap table was very validating. So those are some of the things that we're really excited about.
Thanks, Neil. And since you referenced TailorMed, we'll turn it over to Bryan. I know TailorMed increases revenues for health systems, and I want to hear more about that. But also, can you talk about the impact on the patient experience and the part that healthcare financing has in the patient journey?
Absolutely, and thanks again for having us here. We're really happy to be here. And quick background, so yeah, we're a healthcare technology company based and headquartered in Tel Aviv, and also have offices in New York City as well. Venture-backed, so we have a syndicate of 6 different health system venture groups, including so with also strategic and non-strategic investors. And our focus is on really creating a new market, which is the automation of affordability and financial navigation solutions in healthcare to match patients up to financial assistance programs and help patients be able to afford the treatment that's given to them. So from a patient experience perspective, I feel like that's a really big buzzword that's being used over and over now. And it reminds me of the customer experience or customer service buzzword, where every restaurant even says, we provide the best customer service, we provide the best customer service. But you need to understand what patient experience really means to be able to provide a superior patient experience all across the board. So to be able to have the opportunity to work with companies like from venture to the actual health system, you're able to learn about the real problems they're facing, whether it's financial needs, whether it's needs or gaps in the patient experience that you can help solve for. So what we've done is, by affordability and patients not being able to afford their treatments, that leads to a lack of adherence, that leads to a huge buildup in bad debt for different health systems or pharmacies who are having to cover the cost of the medications that patients can't afford. That leads to a growing number of dollars that are paid for charity care. So what we do is, in helping match patients up to programs and getting them dollars to be able to afford their treatment, that leads to better clinical outcomes. That leads to patients being consistent and stable on their treatments. That leads to a reduction in AR from the health systems. That leads to a reduction in payments of charity care that the health systems can then have their operations teams use to other areas in the system to provide value and benefits for patient care. So it's extremely important to make sure that you understand the experience of what patient experience means. And each health system and each venture group within the health system might have a different answer. So you need to be able to adapt to the needs of all the different systems.
Thanks for that. Diana, we usually talk about wellness in the context of physical or mental health, but can you talk to us about financial wellness and how Laurel Road can support employee attraction and retention?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sue. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here. So Diana Welch, I run Laurel Roads, which is Key's healthcare FinTech platform. We've recently built out a B2B channel partnering with hospitals and health systems because, to Sue's point, what we realized is that our partners in the healthcare industry are very focused on physical health and mental health, which are very important, but there really are these three nodes, three components to wellness that I strongly believe, we strongly believe, have to all sort of work in concert with each other, and financial wellness is the other piece of that. If your money is not right, it will impact your physical health and your mental health. So what we've been able to do at Laurel Road, Key acquired Laurel Road back in 2019. It was a digital fintech platform really primarily focused on student debt refinance for doctors and dentists. The team at Laurel Road and partnering with Key has built out a full digital bank for doctors at first, and then a full digital bank for healthcare professionals. And realizing that over the past few years, really for everybody, those three nodes have been a little out of whack, but particularly for healthcare professionals. And we realized that a lot of the health system partners that we talked to didn't have the tools to necessarily address that as directly. So Laurel Road found a way to bottle all of that goodness, and we've built out our platform through partnerships with folks like the AMA and ADA, and how do we take all of that goodness and allow and enable healthcare employers, hospitals, and health systems to deliver that to their employees. We think if you can do that and help employees with that piece of the wellness puzzle, it'll really help with that attraction, that retention. We've seen a ton of burnout in the healthcare industry, and if you can help a doc not have to worry about their $230,000, which is the average student debt for a physician. They don't have to worry about that on a day-to-day basis. You can really help balance out the three pieces of that pillar.
Thanks. And Pete, way at the end of the stage over here, what are some of the ways the Key is improving cash flow for health systems and the administrative burden in healthcare, trying to reduce it for both the systems as well as the patients?
Yeah, thanks, Sue, and hey, everybody. So our part of Keybank, really, we're the distribution arm. We work with both providers, everything from large hospital systems to small practices, and then we also work with health insurers. So we kind of see the full cycle of what goes on in the payment space. I think there's really three things that we've been looking at. First of all, you heard about kind of the patient experience. We think about it as the digital patient experience, and really, how can we help providers create a consumer experience that consumers are familiar and comfortable with? What we realize is most of you have had some sort of an experience, probably everyone has had an experience in the medical space, and the payment process is really odd. It's like nothing you've ever done before, and most of the tools that are out there are either very old, things like paper statements and writing checks to your doctor. Really what we try to do is automate and digitize that entire process so that our provider clients can improve cash flow, collect more money. Patient bad debt is a big issue in the industry, as you've heard already. So that's one of the areas that we focus on. The second is really building and bridging a gap between the provider world and the payer world. So all of these complex transactions going back and forth between health plans and providers, a lot of it is still paper, believe it or not. There's been a huge push, there's been legislative push, there's been economic push to get that to change, but we've kind of hit a stalemate at this point where maybe we've hit 70% automation in the movement of that data and those payments, but there's still a lot left to do. So what we'll do is work with both parties to try to build more of a straight-through process to get all that data and all that money flowing. Again, at the end of the day, speed up the process of helping get providers paid and help insurance companies make that process as efficient as possible. And then I think the third thing we do is we really try to create some administrative simplification, and it's not really what you think probably. It's more around how do I bring partners to the table that can provide a beneficial capability to either a provider or a health plan, but do it in a way that it's easy for that client of ours to administer. So, you know, you see there are so many companies out there, so many med tech companies that offer these great solutions, but the providers that we work with have to purchase those individually, and it becomes very complicated to manage 10, 15 different relationships with all these types of companies. What we try to do is aggregate that all together and bring it to our client as one, under one contract, under one set of billing, billing tools, so that it's easier for them, and one servicing tool, so it's easier for them to operate. So that's really how we're really trying to drive the changes in that process, Sue.
Thank you. So as funding gets tighter for both startups as well as internal innovation, the idea of outside-in innovation becomes more and more critical. And we talked about the importance of alignment with strategic priorities. But the other thing that was interesting as we got together with this group was we have two representatives of very large, mature organizations. Between Key and university hospitals. They're not only large organizations, they're both operating in highly, highly regulated industries. And then we have two folks on the stage that are working with smaller organizations, successfully working within larger organizations. But I think where would be a good place for us to talk about is what are some of the challenges that a smaller organization, either a startup or a growth stage company, has when they're trying to sell to or work with a larger organization. Pete, you're nodding your head down there. You willing to start us off there in terms of challenges?
Absolutely. So, the good news is what I just talked about a little while ago, a couple minutes ago actually, is that, we have a huge sales channel. We have lots of clients. We have great relationships. We have multiple products that we sell to these clients. So we have this great channel. The challenge is, to your point, there's a lot of regulation in the banking industry, and there's a lot of boxes that we have to check in order to work with, especially as smaller companies, maybe a developing company. What adds to the complexity is now you're throwing healthcare in there too. So you've got HIPAA, and you've got high tech, and you've got ACA, and all the other regulatory regimes that are operating in the healthcare space. So not only do you have to be able to operate in the bank's regulatory regime, but you also have to be able to cover all of the healthcare regulatory aspects as well. And in payments especially, there's a ton of both of those. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we see.
Bryan, I know you sell successfully to large, mature organizations. What's worked for you?
Yeah, I think some of the main challenges is, as a younger company and when you're first going out to raise money, you get an offer and you get so excited and you're like, yes, 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 let's work with this company. Let's take this. We're going to get started. We have someone who believes in us. But you need to be really careful about the kinds of people or companies that you actually decide to work with or take an offer from, because not every partner is going to be the best partner. And not every strategic relationship and investment is going to be the best outcome. You need to understand the needs of the investors that you're pitching to. And, for example, we have a syndicate of 6 different health systems that have invested into us. A lot of the health systems we took investment in from, and then we started to work with them and build our business with them. On the flip side, with what Neil mentioned earlier, we were working with UH as a customer of ours, and then the investment came in afterwards after they started to see the value and success. Some groups have complete firewalls, where if a venture group at a health system wants to invest in you, that doesn't mean anything about you getting access to the health system and introduction. They're complete separation of powers. So you need to really understand who you are getting involved with, talk about your needs, your problems, your challenges, understand the challenges, and be careful about making a decision. Because when you think and act too quickly, which is a blessing too, which you want to be able to be nimble and act too quickly when you're a smaller company. It might not have the best results. So I think the challenge is finding the right partner if you're fortunate to be able to do that.
So as you were saying that earlier, I started laughing, and I'm looking down at Neil, and I'm like hoping that you were one of those right partners, that you were one of the good partners.
Me
right?
too.
Yeah. Neil, can you tell us how that you help smaller organizations navigate the labyrinth of a large health system?
Yeah, sure. Our outside-in team, and I think we've got a couple of people here in the audience, so that if you're a startup or an investor looking, Matt Zanker, Matt and Randall Hoyle, somewhere out here as well. Our outside-in team that these two people lead is really a team of shepherds, and we really see ourselves as shepherds leading our partners through a process. So most of our companies that come in and want to partner with us, whether it's co-development, piloting, maybe they've got a fully baked product and we're ready to become a customer, there's some architectural review that's required. So if you have any tie to IT, if you have anything that's going to be touching our EHR, we've got to go through an architectural review process. And if you've never been through that it's not simple. So we know the questions, we know the people, and we can help guide the companies through that architectural review process. If you have a clinical trial and you're going to be dealing with our patients or our patient data, there's an IRB that you need to go through. Then there's legal and compliance that needs to be checked. And, this labyrinth, this maze that you have to walk through is really a maze of different people with different responsibilities. And a large part of what our outside-in team does is facilitate so that it takes only 6 months to get through or 3 months to get through instead of the year or more that frequently takes place. So that's a large part of the value we drive to our partners.
So Diana, in the middle, you're in a very unique situation where you were on the corp dev team looking at the acquisition, executing the transaction, and now you've flipped and now you're working within the business unit that Key acquired. Can you talk about that process and then also what it's like looking at it from both sides?
How much time do we have? I'm just kidding. So we acquired Laurel Road, as I mentioned, in 2019. Small company, very entrepreneurial, had an amazing team of engineers and an amazing marketing team. And as we looked at that deal, we said there is some real synergy here with the talent that Laurel Road could bring to Key, but also what Key could bring to Laurel Road. And the interesting thing, sort of seeing it from all sides, going back to the very beginning of the integration process, the deal process, we were focused on 3 things. One was, how do you preserve the genius? So that engineering expertise, that marketing expertise. How do you leverage the best of the mothership that is Key? So we also have some amazing technologists, risk infrastructure, all of those things that you don't have when you're a small, plucky startup. And then, oh, by the way, how do you realize the value of the deal through synergies and all of that good stuff? And so one of our leaders at Key came up with this phrase, and I really love it. It's, don't crush the butterfly, but also don't trip the elephant. So how do you create a bubble, a cocoon around this great entrepreneurial-minded startup, but also how do you make sure that Key doesn't end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? And I think seeing it from both sides, you get a great appreciation for walking in the shoes of the 200-year-old bank, but also walking in the shoes of the plucky startup, and you start to operate with empathy, which I think is very important when you do a deal like this and you're a small company coming into a big mothership. Both sides have to look at the other team's perspective. And I think one of the things that we tried to do, I think we did it well, was get everybody rowing in the same direction and believing in the same vision. So when we launched Laurel Road for Doctors, the national digital bank, there's the Laurel Road team, but there was also a team that we called a team of Sherpas on the Key side, which were helping guide folks to the mountaintop. And I think getting everybody feeling like they were wearing the same jersey, even though there were 2 colors on it, was very important for that to succeed. And I think over time, you saw the Laurel Road team still preserve the core of what makes them special, but over time understanding the importance of some of the risk and the compliance and all the things.
I'm seeing all the knowing smiles and the laughter in your eyes down there. There have to be some good stories about big companies and small companies working together. What's worked well, what have been horror stories. Anybody down there got something they want to share?
Yeah, so you just heard the good story, I think. I could tell you that things don't always go as planned. Back in the early 2000s when I was working with a different financial institution who decided to start acquiring small companies, we acquired a really interesting technology that was a healthcare technology. The challenge was the guy who ran the company and owned the company, we didn't realize, I think, and he didn't realize just how much his life was going to change in the bureaucracy and the size of working with a large institution. And this was a larger institution than Key. And I was the unfortunate person that got assigned to be his Sherpa, as you would say. So, my day always started off at 8 o'clock in the morning with a ranting, raving phone call from this guy because he was mad about something, whether we had, required him to do something or he couldn't get his technology done in the time frame that he wanted. So this went on and on for a long time, and finally he just decided, that's it, I'm done. And I got a photograph of him sailing his boat past the Statue of Liberty and never saw the guy again. So things don't always work out, but I think the lesson there is if you're not prepared as the acquired company to walk into that type of environment, if you're working with a bank, the money sounds great and it all sounds good at the beginning, but you got to be prepared for that because, as we've all said here, there's a lot that gets layered on top of what you're accustomed to doing. So that was kind of an unpleasant outcome there.
Anyone else have anything they want to share on that?
I have a fun one. Well, I don't know if it's that fun, but in 2022, Key acquired a company called GradFin. They focused on shepherding individuals through the government student loan programs like public service loan forgiveness, et cetera. Prior to us acquiring GradFin, we took a look at a different small company, also very entrepreneurial minded in the same space, and we were all very excited about the idea of partnership. And then as we continued conversations, to Pete's point, the weight of what was to come when you partner with a large institution, especially a bank, the bureaucracy, all of the things, it became too much. And what we learned and what they learned is that they weren't quite ready for that stage of their growth. And I think if I had to give a little bit of advice on that piece, I think it's, know where your company is sort of in that stage of maturity, and are you looking for relationship deepening and advice? Are you ready for partnership? Because if you're not, it cannot work out the way that everybody potentially wants it to work out.
I think the only thing I would sort of add to this conversation is in healthcare, some of the disconnects we've seen have been around the timelines because we move slower, certainly from a venture perspective, than we would like to. We try to do things to move closer to the speed of venture than the speed of healthcare, but there's usually a disconnect. And if you haven't planned as a founder or an entrepreneur for a little bit of extra time, you start to run out of cash, and that starts to change the dynamic with your investors, with your board, with your strategics. So I would just say if you're partnering with healthcare, plan for a little bit extra time. If you find that you don't need it, you'll come out the back end in a stronger position.
+1 for banks.
And I would just add to that is make sure that you are proactive with communication on good, bad, and the ugly. Do not be scared to share news that you might be afraid of what people might think if something might not be good. That is what actually builds stronger relationships, that helps your reputation. And when you can partner with someone who invested in you to work through the bad and the challenging, you'd be amazed at what that does in the future.
From the last panel, they were talking about the value of a board. I mean, you don't want to surprise your board. That would be the last thing. You're better off giving them bad news early on than waiting till the end.
As someone that serves on several early stage company boards, I second that. So for companies, how early should they start the conversation with a strategic partner? Because I think, now you're looking potentially for investment, but maybe even more importantly for a first big marquee customer or a co-development partner, and ultimately maybe as your exit strategy. So when do you start that conversation? How far along does the company need to be? What kind of accomplishments before they walk in the door?
I guess I would say, again, some experiences that we've had is, especially if we're talking about healthcare and banking, you've got to make sure that you've got and understand the regulatory regimen you're dealing with, and you have expertise on your staff to do that. We had a really interesting opportunity that we worked on a few years back, and as we worked through it, we were all getting really excited about the product and the capabilities and how it would help our clients out. But we got to a point where we realized that the company we were talking to just did not have the level of expertise they needed around regulatory aspects of their business, because it involved patient lending, which of course has a whole nother regime attached to it. So you got to have that level of expertise I think in this industry in a very elevated position within the company. So when you've got to that point, then I think you're ready to talk to a bank or another large investor.
I think on the smaller side, your investors are not going to always be your acquirers. And what's important to really think about in this situation is it's not bad to reach out to someone and just let them know where you're at, what's going on, and just say, I don't know if this is the right time to ask for money. I don't know if this is not the right time, and just get their advice. And maybe going into it not directly asking for money and talking about your situation, you might get some great advice that it might not be the right time, or you might connect with someone that when the timing is right, that they're always going to be a door open for the opportunity for them to look and potentially invest.
Reminds me of the saying, ask for money and you'll get advice, ask for advice and you'll get money, right?
It's a good one.
I think I've got two different answers to that question. When I'm talking to our portfolio companies, I encourage them to meet as many potential investors as early as possible, to get on their radar, to let them know what you're doing. Because if you tell them that you're going to do something by a certain amount of time and you come back and you've done it, you start to build trust. And if you haven't done it and you can share why, you may build even more trust. So, part of me says, get out as early as possible to meet those potential partners, potential investors. On the flip side, from the inside, I want somebody coming with data. I want somebody coming with a business case. I want somebody coming who is going to make my job easier in terms of selling internally and finding the right champions internally who are going to help you take this forward, and maybe more importantly, figuring out what kind of budgets and how many budgets and who am I going to be talking to. So two different answers to the same question.
I think even to that second point, having a hypothesis around where the connection points are. I think if you come in and say, these are the 10 things we do, or this is the one thing we do, but I don't know what the use case is, which that's okay, but have a hypothesis. I think that helps build champions internally. I think that helps socialize internally and things like that.
So before we get into our closing round of questioning, thinking about specifically about corporate venture. And I'm thinking of some of the founders here are probably looking for institutional rounds, may not be thinking of corporate venture. They may not know it exists, or they may also be afraid of the strings that might be attached with getting an investment from a potential customer. Any thoughts specifically on corporate venture?
Sure. So I think it depends on the age, stage, and the exit strategies for the company, whether corporate venture or when it might make sense. We're not a potential exit partner for you. So early on, we can be good co-development partners. We can provide good insights. We become that premier first customer, but we're not going to be that exit partner. We can facilitate introductions to other investors who might become that partner, but that's not going to be us.
Okay, I'm going to give each member of the panel a minute or two to give us a piece of final advice for either the founders or the corporate executives in the room. But as I promised with the big reveal, let's start with the person up here who hosted a weekly radio show for 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I hosted when I was in college, I hosted a radio show for 2 years, once a week, every Sunday morning for an hour. It was about sports. And yeah, it was a great experience. We always got to use the Media Pass parking. I went to Indiana University, so I'm a Hoosier. So we always got to park right in front of the stadium and walk right in when everyone else was walking from all across the campus. So that was pretty cool. Advice: be vulnerable, and be vulnerable. I really would say, people work with people, and people work with people that they trust and believe are like real people. And you cannot be afraid to sit in a room and say, you don't understand, you don't know, can you explain something differently? And I'll give you an example of even a business case. So, knock on wood, like today, you might not even know this, but our company is hopefully will be signing with one of the 3 largest pharma companies in the world. And when
Thanks for the good news.
not yet, it's 50-50 still. But when we were in our earlier meetings with them and they were doing diligence with us, I was sitting with my CEO in their office, and their executives flat out asked us, what are the biggest complaints that your company gets from your existing customers? The key to responding is in the vulnerability of the response and not being afraid to share the true problems or the true complaints that people have, because then it just makes a real element as a person for who you are and how to overcome it. And for us at that time, that was the problems that we had with data connectivity to some of our pharmacy partners, specialty pharmacies, retail pharmacies. And originally we were working with health systems. They only need once-a-day data transfers from their EMRs. In the pharmacy space, you need real-time, up-to-the-second, bi-directional APIs. And this was a problem that our customers were having. We ultimately worked around it and resolved it. But the key to that was being vulnerable. And even to this day, that pharma company mentions the fact that truly made them believe in us as a company and who we are. And that separated us from some of the answers they got from some of our competitors.
Thanks, Bryan. And now our adrenaline junkie who skydives, scuba dives, and skis really, really fast.
Hello. I do like to do all those things, and the faster the better. I guess the advice I would give is to the startup companies. One, if you want to get into healthcare, really figure out who your champion is. You need a strong champion internally to help you sell internally. I think then you need to come with a business case and understand whose budget that's going to roll up to, because all of our organizations, I think, you heard Bryan infer that, if once you've seen one hospital system, you've only seen one. We're all different. Our decision-making is different. Our budgets, where things fall, are different. And understanding that early on will help you build the right business case and be able to sell that into your customer.
Thanks. And the person on stage who had their copy of The Great Gatsby stolen by none other than Bill Clinton.
That's me. That's a fun story now. Bill Clinton did an event at my high school and decided to sign things for folks, and all I had was my copy of The Great Gatsby. He took it and did not give it back, so I didn't do well on the test. But in terms of advice, so I would say don't be afraid to be provocative, be persistent, but be patient. Especially in corporate venture, it's always going to take a little bit longer than you think to get things done. You might get a little frustrated with the mothership, but have some patience and be persistent.
And our avid sailor who raced aboard the Bonehead.
Yeah, I guess that leaves me, right? So if any of you guys have
Could've
ever
been me.
raced the sailboat before, you know that there's a lot of hailing that goes on, like you're yelling at other boats to get out of your way and stuff, and it's usually just yell in that direction. Everybody loved racing against us because they could yell, "Hey, bonehead, get out of the way." It was very fun. So my advice would be, don't be afraid to reach out. I am not a corporate development person, as you could probably tell from some of my answers. I mean, I'm basically a salesperson that sells into the industry, but I probably talk to 2 or 3 companies a week that have different ideas on how to improve our clients' experience or provide a benefit to our clients, and I always want to hear what they have to say, because there's some really cool ideas, there's some not so great ideas, but the bottom line is, if you want a sounding board and you want some people that have experience, I mean, I've been working in the healthcare industry from a banking perspective for 15, 16 years. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask, and you can make the connectivity. Every bank has a healthcare sales team in the payment space, in the lending space, in all sorts of other areas. You can find out pretty easily who those guys are. I mean, go on LinkedIn, you can find out. So in most places will not ignore your calls necessarily. They'll take your call because they want to hear what you have to say. So I would just not let that be a barrier to you reaching out, especially to a large institution like Key or anybody else, to try to get advice or just talk about what you guys are thinking about and what your capabilities are.
So that leaves me as the person that went diving with whale sharks last week. I'm an avid scuba diver. I've tried to dive with whale sharks in Belize, did 4 separate dives where we never saw a whale shark. So this past week, I did the sure thing. I dove in the aquarium at the Georgia Aquarium, where in the tank, they can't get away. You get to see them, their manta ray friends, their little shark friends. So I feel like a bit of a fraud, but there were 2 whale sharks, one 27-foot and one 25-foot in the aquarium with me. So I couldn't believe when they asked me to do this panel and then told me who was on it, that being in the Northeast Ohio early stage business community, and I spent a lot of time in Columbus with companies, that I actually only knew one of these panelists. I only knew Neil prior to this event. And it's been just such a pleasure meeting this group, watching the interplay, watching the connection, really what this event is about, the intersection of industries and companies and making those connections. And I just want to thank you all for your time, for your energy and your ideas as we look for innovation at the intersection of FinTech and healthcare. Thank you.